So every week there are some studs that you have to sit because of matchup or injury. But we don't point out injured players to you because we figure you're smart enough to figure that out. And I don't believe in the old adage, always start your studs. I think that's a big mistake. So every week we give you 4 studs to sit. Last week we were 2-1-1, which puts us at 32-19-9, 608 for the year. So 60% of the time we're telling you to sit a top 12 player, and we're right. So what studs are we sitting this week? Well, for me, I went the running back route, and I went with Houston's running back, Joe Mixon. Now, I may be a week late and $1 short on this call because he did have a bad week last week. He was held to 12 of 23 with no touchdowns last week. He did add 5 receptions for 56 yards, which, it wasn't expected really, a little unexpected. It still wasn't enough to push him up into a wide receiver 1 range. This week he faces a Chiefs defense that is limiting running backs to 85 yards per game. Again, not lead running backs, all running backs. KC is the stingiest defense versus running backs in the league. All right. One warning, Mixon has 6 targets in each of his past 3 games, and he's converted them to 14 receptions. But he's not adding a lot of yardage with those receptions, and his only receiving TD came way back in week 6. So I think his first game back from a 3-week injury induced, I think that this was his first week back from a 3-week induced injury vacation. So it's a little understandable that he was a little down. I just think it's the defense that gets him down this week. Now, let's go over to our pro again. Mike, who you got?
I have Terry McLaurin this week as a guy I'm going to sit. The last time they played was week 11. The Commanders played the Eagles. The Eagles give up the least amount of fantasy points to wide receivers. He had 1 catch for 10 yards. I don't really expect a lot from Jaden Daniels either this week. That's a defense that defends the pass and the wide receiver exceptionally well, literally the best, right? So Terry McLaurin's somebody I'm not finding so scary in week 16.
I kind of like McLaurin. I don't know about the matchup, but I got to tell you, the guy he catches the ball and he gets in the end zone, and that I don't know what more you can ask for. But I've been wrong before too many times. Joe, who do you got?
Like you, Greg, I also went the running back route. I decided that I'm going to sit Devon Achane. We have Jalen Waddle not practicing with a knee injury. So I just think that if he doesn't play, and he's likely not going to play, it's going to be easy for San Fran to focus in on Achane defensively. Also, over his last 4 games, he's only averaged 2.6 yards per carry. He's been involved in the passing game, and he probably will continue to be involved. But I think that San Fran is going to do a good enough job containing him this week, maybe limiting to him to like 3 to 4 catches as opposed to the 7 or 8 he's been getting. And if he doesn't get a touchdown, I could see him having a 10 to 12 point floor game. So the spike week from Achane, I just don't see it happening this week.
Okay, are you concerned about his explosive ability though? Because when you think about it, all he has to do is get one handoff, and he gets into that. Remember, you don't get a win unless he's outside the top 24 running backs. Right. Which means if he finishes with 12, 14 points, he might be in that 20 to 24 range.
Well, I think that's his sail. I'm thinking that's going to be his sailing. I don't see him breaking off a big one against San Fran. They got too much chaos through the middle, too many layers. They're gonna make Miami dink and dunk. They're gonna make Tua beat them, and that's how I see this game playing out. San Fran's offense usually controls the pace of game, the clock too, against inferior opponents. and I see San Fran handling Miami pretty easily this week.
Okay, well, Steven, who do you have?
Listen, I've got to put it out there. When I did make this pick, I thought it was going to be Uncle Rico, a.k.a. Desmond Ritter, throwing the ball. So I was much more confident in sitting Brock Bowers this week, tight end 1. But with Aiden O'Connell looking like he's coming back, this could be a tougher pickup. But the last time Aiden O'Connell and Brock Bowers were on the field together, he did only produce around 8 fantasy points. So in a situation where you might have a possibility to pivot to, say, a Jonnu Smith here, I might go ahead and snag and roll with Jonnu over Brock this week. Aiden's coming off an injury. You just don't know how a quarterback's going to produce coming off injury. Jonnu's coming off of 20, 13, 21, and 23 points. And with Waddle out, most likely, I think this is something that you could pivot on. But I'm sitting Brock Bowers. Might kick me in the butt, but...
Hey, I got to go a little bit on that Jonnu one. In the one game that he had the lowest amount of points, he didn't catch a ball until the fourth quarter, late in the fourth quarter, and then he caught like 4 passes on that final drive and got in the end zone. I mean, prior to that, he was getting 10 to 12 targets per game. If Jonnu Smith is available on your waiver wire, you need to get him now.
Especially with Waddle potentially not playing. I mean, he could be huge.
Absolutely. Even if Waddle plays, so he still gets used a lot, apparently. Yeah, I can't figure it out. I haven't watched. Have you watched the Miami games? Is he just getting wide open, or is it just that Tua's looking for him?
I've seen a few of the games just being on the East Coast, and he feels like a security blanket like Zach Ertz does to Jaden Daniels. He's just that guy that is going to consistently be in the middle and get thrown to and know that he's going to catch the ball. Jonnu's always been really good. I just don't think he's ever been respected enough to be the guy. And now he's older, so he's kind of past that prime, but he's fun to watch.
I also think it helps that he's lower in the pecking order as far as the offense goes. So the defense is going to, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to give you Jonnu Smith for 7 yards over the middle and take away the more explosive guys than Tyreek and Devon Achane.
And McDaniels using Jonnu the way he said he would in the preseason. That's really what's coming down with us, right? He told us he was going to do this. No one believed him. And then he started doing it. Jonnu's always been a great pass catcher. Being a Patriots fan, it was exceptionally disappointing when he was here because they never threw him the ball. He's a good blocker, too. He's just a good all-around tight end. I was super happy to see this guy start exploding on the scene again because he's good, and it's worthy of how good he is, right? Like,
well, in redraft leagues next year, let me ask you, Mike, do you think Jonnu Smith becomes a top 5 drafted tight end?
Maybe. We'll see. Probably because of recency bias. Now, whether or not he'll deserve that, we don't know, right? Because tight end is an ever-changing and evolving position, it appears. We thought a lot of guys would be top 3 this year or top 5 this year that aren't. So, probably. I think he'll get drafted that way. Whether or not he'll perform that way again next year, I don't know, right?
Well, we got some time left, so I want to go back to everybody else's pick, and I want each of us to pick one pick that the other guys made that we really like, that we think has a good chance of being a stud to sit. And I got to tell you, last week when we did this, everybody loved Tip's pick because he said to sit Josh Jacobs. That didn't work out so well. I'm sorry. Brock Bowers, to me, is a guy that has played extremely well, but the one I think is most likely to hit is Joe Carlton's pick, a Devon Achane. I love that pick. So since I picked yours, Joe, who do you pick? Other than yours, what stud to sit do you like the best?
Who did you pick, Greg?
Mixon.
So
I picked Mixon. Mike picked Terry McLaurin.
I think I'm going to side with Mike on this one. just because, for one thing, I respect when Mike says to sit a stud. He's pretty good at this. I read his article every week.
I have Joe Mixon in my article too, by the way, there, Joe.
Hey, I'd love to hear that.
So, yeah, but Mixon's more likely to find the end zone. He's going to have a chance to find the end zone, I should say. And just because Brock Bowers has had a couple of bad weeks, I think a bounce back week is coming this week. So I mean, this is a tough one all around without picking my own. So I'll go with Terry McLaurin.
All right, Mike, he chose yours. You've got to choose between Mixon, McLaurin, Achane, and Bowers. Who do you like?
Going with Mixon. I have Mixon as a sit this week too. It's a tough run defense that he's going up against. He's cleared to play, but he tweaked his ankle pretty good last week. So the combination of the tough defense and the potential for his ankle to bother him again is partly why I was saying he's a sit. It doesn't mean he's going to stink, right? It just means he's probably not going to produce what you expect expectation-wise from a typical Joe Mixon game this year, which has been excellent. So, 10 fantasy points or so, yeah, probably. 20 fantasy points? Nah, I doubt it.
Yeah, he's not worth that. He's not worth that DraftKings price.
No, not at all.
You guys are referring to this daily fantasy sports that I haven't done yet, where you got to price on players. Steven, do you need to be reminded who was picked, or are you good?
No, I was gonna go with Joe Mixon. I think it just echoes the sentiment. The hip drop tackle was brutal, like they normally are, and those, it's a tough injury. I think he'll fight through it because they're fighting. I think they've got a playoff spot locked up, but they can move up to the third spot, which would be helpful, obviously. So I think he'll tough it out and play for the team. But last week he didn't look very spectacular, so I think Joe Mixon might struggle this week again.
I love it. I do. And now, in fairness to our guests and our guest host, I put in my selections first, so they couldn't take the players I picked. So I kind of got a heads up on that.